Maria is here to talk to Queens about a lecture called What You Don't Know Can Hurt You. Would you like to talk a bit about what you're talking about?
Yeah, actually when they asked me, they sent me an email about coming to Queens, and at the time I actually didn't know what I was going to speak about. And I am in a show at Harbourfront Centre in Toronto next week, and I had to do research on African Canadian choreographers, and I didn't know any of the information that I saw there, and I just thought, this is so amazing, and I don't know it, and I'm sure kids don't know it, and I sort of remember what it was like growing up not knowing history and the contributions that Black people made to history, and so that's kind of where the title came from.
Perfect. So the internet describes you as a poet, a singer, an artist, a motivational speaker, and a teacher. Can you explain how you put all of these things into one person?
Controlled business, ADHD. On a serious note, I've always sort of been a multidisciplinary artist, so my degree's in theater. I sang in a group called For the Moment for 12.5 years, and I always sang when I was younger. I write. I've been writing since I was in high school till now, and I get paid for it, which is even better. I started doing a speaker series in the schools probably around 1994 after doing work in the schools and just realizing that I probably had a lot of things that I could share with young people to motivate them, and that's where the speaker series came from. And then spoken word, and I've always done poetry, but I got introduced to spoken word in Toronto in 1995, and from the time I was listening to it, I started writing poetry, spoken word type poetry, and then been performing that ever since.
So you incorporate poetry, song, and speech into your presentations first?
Yeah, so the artivationally speaking came from, I say that I'm an artist and I motivate, so I artivate, that's where that came from. And yeah, I have a very short attention span myself, so I think that especially if you're going to be speaking to high school, I do assemblies for 600 high school students, and they listen for an hour, so something works.
Yeah.
So I've just kind of learned, especially sometimes when the messages are hard-hitting, that maybe if you put that in a song or in a poem, it might be more pleasing to the ear, and people will still listen to it and get the message. And so I usually incorporate all those things into my presentations.
And what kind of messages do you discuss with high school students?
Anything from leadership, self-esteem, anti-bullying. I do things obviously on diversity, or it's Black History Month now, so I'm doing things on those themes. But a lot of my work comes from a school might make a request and say, we're having a leadership conference, can you do a piece on equity and leadership? And then I just do the research and I'll create it. So I have a lot more keynotes and speeches now than I had when I initially started. I maybe had 3 or 4. But every time I get a request, something new gets created, like today.
Yeah, that's excellent. And you also started your own business.
Yeah.
When did you start that?
So in 1994, in Nova Scotia, I started my company, Imani Enterprises, and I know, I've always been an entrepreneur. I had 25 babysitting jobs by the time I was 16, and I used to organize a schedule so I could sometimes do 2 or 3 in one night. So I lived in a big apartment complex. And then when I worked in recreation, that was my first job. I did day camps and playgrounds for 2 years, and I hated it. So I went to the boss and I said, listen, can I start my own drama program called Active Youth? And I wrote a proposal. And I started the program there. So I sort of always had that, and I don't know what made me, now I can't remember why I named it Imani Enterprises, other than I'd learned about my culture at the time, and I learned the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, and one is Imani, and that means faith. And I really felt that exemplified who I was, and that's sort of where the company name came from. And then I found out how you register sole proprietorship, and I've been doing that ever since.
So you've mixed your passions, your creativity, and your culture to create your own career. Yeah. Do you have any advice for students who are passionate about something or very creative, and how they can become an entrepreneur based off of their passions?
Yeah, number 1, don't listen to all the naysayers or your family who doesn't understand, especially being in the arts. It's not something that people quite get why you want to pursue that, or why don't you just get a regular 9 to 5. But I think the number one thing, especially when you're in school, I think I originally wanted to study international development, but my friend was in theater and he kept urging me to audition, like, what am I going to do with theater? I can't have a career in that. But when I did audition and get in the program, I loved it. So I think, one, find something, especially if you're spending all of your hard-earned money, that you're passionate about. Or study what you're passionate about, but also study business or something else so that you have something to fall back on. So my degree was in theater, and when my class, I was in Nova Scotia at the time, they all came to Toronto to go on audition tours, and I wanted to work. So I worked. I ran a not-for-profit organization at a very young age for 2.5 years, and all those skills are what I do now, like grant writing and, you know, planning, had to do exchange trips and conferences and events, and I use all of those skills now. So if I, you know, I don't know, I just sort of always had that sense that you still need to have something to fall back on. So my thing is just do it, don't talk about it, just do it and try it, and it's okay if you fail because you're gonna learn from that failure. What you don't know can hurt you, make you feel like a part of this education system set out to desert you. These words I speak come from my heart because when I was growing up, knowledge about myself and my culture was often kept in the dark. But I can remember the day that I learned that I was more than just the descendant of a slave, that I came from a people who were bold and brave, scientists and entrepreneurs, inventors and writers, philosophers, kings and queens, and those who helped to cure disease. Not knowing who I really was took away my self-esteem, made the notes I took in school not equal to my classmates who were free to dream. So I am forever grateful to my brother David Woods, who introduced me to my history when I thought I was no good, who opened up doors and alleyways of knowledge and taught me things that made me solid. And now I know that I am standing on the shoulders of ancestors who were majestic. I am walking in the shadows of great leaders who protested, and that my people were enslaved not because they were inferior, but a great people who had the heart of a warrior. And so I will continue to hold my head up high through the stereotypes on the media, and I no longer cry, because knowing who I am means my life and dreams are boundless. And now let's just stop for a minute and take a look around us. Or better yet, look inside my mirror and tell me what you see. Have you been brainwashed to relate to me as a pop star that's always on the TV? Or can you take me as I am, an educated woman who's strong and who's not a victim of any stereotype and whose story will one day belong on the pages of her own story because she learned the reward of hard work and she spoke and taught in schools all over the world so that education could no longer hurt.